Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our Killer Content Showcase series. It's designed to provide our attendees an in-depth look behind the scenes at some campaigns that won some killer awards at the B2B Marketing Exchange this past February. My name is Brian Anderson. I'm a news editor at Demand Gen Report, which produces the B2B Marketing Exchange and the Killer Content Awards. And with me today, we have Greg Mooney, who is the Senior Content Manager at Ipswitch. So, hi Greg, how's it going today?
Good. How you doing, Brian? Glad to be here.
Doing very well, sir. Thanks for asking. With Ipswitch won a Killer Content Award for in our social amplification category for their Defrag This podcast and blog, and it saw some considerable traffic on social media, and we're going to chat with Greg today about what that process was like, formulating this type of content and getting it out into the social space, and talk about the success that we've seen. All right, Greg, let's get on to the first question. Tell us a little bit more about the Defrag This podcast and the blog that corresponds with it. What's your target audience, and ultimately what was the goal for this type of campaign?
Yeah, so the blog and the podcast as an overall campaign. I kind of came on board on Ipswitch back in 2015, and basically when I came, there was essentially no blog at all. Their blog, what they considered was a blog, was essentially just basic press releases, stuff like that. And so we really wanted to increase our organic traffic over the course of a couple of years to something significant, so we could get some ranking on Google for our products. And so obviously our products are solely IT products. So we're trying to reach out to an IT demographic that's system administrators, CISOs. CISOs are chief security officers and chief information officers, mostly in industries such as finance, healthcare, government. So obviously, knowing that, a huge aspect to the blog and the podcast content that we created had a lot to do with cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is probably the biggest issue on IT's minds these days, especially in those industries. So what we started off with was basically, I think the only people who followed the blog and the podcast didn't even exist yet were people who worked at Ipswitch, and there was no amplification going on. So to start off, we started building the blog in 2016 with some considerable efforts, creating. I think we were pretty much producing probably about 10 blog posts per week, give or take. That was between 5 to 10 blog posts per week. And the idea was just starting to build content around topics that would, attract that type of audience of sysadmins and, CISOs and CIOs. So we with that kind of output, which was kind of painstaking at the time, we were able to, increase our traffic from around, I think it was about 1,000 views per year to about 10,000 views in the first year, which to me, I've worked on other blogs before at other companies. 10,000 isn't that big. But I knew moving forward that this would grow. Then in 2017, we decided that we wanted to really, brand our blog something, that was more than just Ipswitch, something that wasn't, because when you go to a vendor blog, you can know it's a vendor, and it's not that we're trying to hide the fact that we're a vendor, but we wanted to brand our blog differently because we kind of think of, we want people to hang out with us and interact with us on social and all that, and we don't want people in the IT space we kind of say they have these BS meters, in which they kind of don't fall for marketing or basic marketing tactics. It's kind of comes with the territory of marketing these people, and they catch on right away. So we basically decided to create a different brand for the blog that would it would still hold the Ipswitch name in essence, but it was really more of I like to think of it more as a community where people could come, get content that we're creating that isn't about our products, but it's just ways that can help IT do their job better. And a lot of that was cybersecurity or just, doing basic things that weren't even, teaching them how to code in PowerShell or teaching them how to code in Python. And these were things that, obviously IT people, they're looking for it, they're searching for it online, but it doesn't particularly have to do with, our products per se. But there is a connection in that, if they're doing this stuff, and chances are they work in IT or they work in this industry, and they're probably going to want to actually, they may have a need for our product down the road. So it was just a way to get them to interact with us. So to build off of what we had built in 2016, we added on the brand Defrag This in 2017 and also started building out the podcast, which was I kind of have an audio background, so I always wanted to do, podcasts. It was kind of like my brainchild to begin with. And then, I got everyone else, Jean Hopkins, who's our CMO. She's been a huge help in trying to kickstart this, along with Kevin Conklin, who's the vice president of marketing here. They stood behind me and they said, well, you've grown this blog. And obviously we see the future is all video and audio. People, if you're on the train in the morning going to work, I mean, it's a lot easier to listen to a podcast for 20 minutes than it is to, read a blog. It's a lot easier to listen to a podcast if you're in your car driving. Nobody can do that. So that was kind of, it kind of gave us, we felt, a way to kind of amplify the blog and what we're doing here at Ipswitch and with our content. And it also gave us the ability to kind of, build upon that and give different ways for people to digest content. So that's kind of why we kind of built the Defrag This brand. And it was more than just a blog and also became a podcast.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit around content consumption habits, and it's much easier on trips to work to consume a 15, 20-minute podcast versus reading a 50 to 100-page ebook, and you're seeing that throughout the B2B tech space. But are there any other reasons why Ipswitch decided to go with podcasts as a particular format? We're seeing in the B2B space in particular, podcasts start to pick up a lot of momentum when it comes to preferred content formats.
Yeah, it was kind of just, I've been kind of fascinated with that type of media for a while, and I'd kind of been watching it slowly peek its head into, what content marketers were doing. And I hadn't, we had some competitors who had tried to do similar things, but it looked like that, I think it was an interesting stat that we kind of found. I think it was, I forget where the report came from, but it was that basically a lot of our competitors, a lot of people in the IT space, they would create podcasts, and this might even be beyond IT, this might be everywhere, but they would create podcasts, they'd go for like 10 episodes, and then they would just die. Like they just ran out of content or they didn't know how to do it. And, I saw in other industries that it was wildly successful. Like I could tell that, if you went on to Spotify, you could see that, it was highly popular. iTunes is a little more weird with giving you the analytics, but if you go to SoundCloud, there was definitely B2B companies on there who were doing podcasts, and you were seeing they were getting thousands and listens and downloads. So I mean that intrigued me. So it's like I knew there was a need for it, and I felt that there was an opportunity for us to expand beyond just the written word here. So yeah.
So when it comes to the social aspect of it, you folks won a Killer Content Award for social amplification. How did the social media channels tied in with this type of content format, how did that help amplify your?
Yeah, so it was huge. I mean, I'm, as a content marketer, I honestly believe that, content and social they come hand in hand. Nobody's going to see your content. Nobody's going to visit your page if you don't have a way to amplify it and get it out there. So, I mean, I always considered social media as a tool of, always amplifying our content efforts, whether it's through paid social was a huge aspect of it, believe it or not, more so than organic social. Organic social is great for when you've got people who are actually following you and, you got your super fans, so to speak. But, I think over the past couple of years, which has been a big driver to kind of, we don't use as, which is funny, we don't use as much paid social now because we've kind of built the organic growth. So that's kind of taken over for the paid, but putting a little paid social behind it was actually, in doing it in a way that, we were hitting the right demographic, because if you're not hitting the right people, nobody's going to listen to it. They'll be like, why is this showing up on my Facebook page? Like, this is nothing. Then they'll tag you as this is, and you won't get any traffic. I've played that game at previous companies too, and that never worked. So we found a way where we could hit only IT people with this content. And if they hadn't heard about us, now it's going to show up on their Facebook page, even if they hadn't followed us. And I think a lot of our growth was kickstarted by doing that with social media.
As a side question to that, what is are you using any specific type of software tools, or is this all in-house to better identify and target who in particular you want this podcast to be seen by?
Yeah, it was it's kind of a little bit of both. I mean, it was really, I mean, we knew strictly who our demographic was, and tools, we had used a few tools to try to do this, but at the end of the day, I mean, the tools were never really, that beneficial when it came to paid social media. Personally, I use Agora Pulse for, obviously like content scheduling, social media scheduling, and amplification, but we don't necessarily use that for paid. For paid, you kind of had to use, Twitter paid's tools or the Facebook tool. Like, they don't really give you much of a choice.
So tell us a little bit more about the process of formulating this type of campaign. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the types of conversations you were having with your CMO and your CEO, and to get buy-in from them from that aspect. Mm-hmm. So once the buy-in was there, what did the process look like to getting this type of a campaign set up?
Yeah, well, first I'll talk about the buy-in, because the buy-in part's the hardest part. Especially when you're working with a sales team. I think a lot of content marketers struggle with this, is that how do you get sales on board? Because it's not cheap. You got to buy the equipment. You'll see the equipment here. I mean, this is thousands of dollars of equipment. So, I mean, it's a decent ding in your budget. So how are you going to get that buy-in? How are you going to explain ROI? And I guess the hardest part to explain is what ROI is to with this kind of stuff, because a lot of the content we're creating is very top of the funnel, not necessarily about our product. It's more, a lot of it's brand awareness, or just providing IT people with content that helps them, so that we can make our brand become a trusted brand in their eyes. So explaining that was definitely a challenge. I think Gene Hopkins and Kevin Conklin knew that coming, knew that was, they knew that was a challenge as well, because they had seen it in the past as well. So it was good having their help with that, explaining that. Really, at the end of the day, what I had to show was the reason that this is going to help, our brand and our image as a whole, is that we are going to get more people and more traffic to our website, and get people have more eyes on our brand, that even if somebody comes to our blog and they don't buy the product, it's a lot more long tail, I understand. But, at the end of the day, they're hanging out with us. They're by word of mouth. They're sharing blog posts with their friends in IT. So, it's not like there are CTAs on our blog and stuff like that. So, there are people trickling in that way. So and I think also the first year was kind of an experiment, and what was great with our sales organization and the rest of the organization is they gave us a chance to experiment in a way that we could show the benefits of it. And that growth in traffic at this point, I believe the blog is probably about 25% of all of our organic traffic, and just showing those results to the rest of the organization has been a huge indicator that this is something special and that it's working.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into the results. You just shared that stat there about how 25% of all your organic traffic is coming from this blog. Is there any other types of stats, success metrics that you could share with us as an update from what's in the report?
Yeah, so, well, I know TPG couldn't join us today, but the Pedowitz group actually, they didn't help with building the blog, but they're actually, so a big thing that we're trying to do in 2018 is trying to show actual ROI, and that means putting a dollar figure on the blog and podcast. We've already proven that the traffic's there and that these are IT people, but something we've struggled with at Ipswitch is kind of connecting, the different parts of the funnel. When somebody from the blog goes to the website and then fills out a form or something, how do you know they came from the blog? And how, once it gets to sales, how can they see that, oh, this person originally, originate from the blog? I think that's something we've struggled with, which we're actually working with TPG to actually build out now. And I think that will obviously give us a lot more, visibility into that. And I think I know for a fact, we have little examples that, these people are trickling into the website and actually buying our products and becoming opportunities and all that. It's just a matter of being able to show that data in a way that the rest of the organization can digest it so sales can digest and see that there is actual influence.
Well, I really do appreciate you, Greg, taking the time to let us look behind the curtain and learn a little bit more about the Defrag This podcast and the success that you're seeing through that medium, and appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
No, I appreciate talking to you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to everybody else that was able to join us today. Appreciate you taking the time. Nominations are going to be open for the Killer Content Awards for 2019 very soon. Do not have a specific date yet, but be sure to keep an eye out on all the social channels as well as emails for when we announce that we'll be accepting nominations. Also, if you want to learn more about the other award winners from 2018, such as Ipswitch, feel free to check out B2B Marketing Exchange /awards. The link should pop up at the bottom of the screen here, and feel free to give that report a look. A lot of great award winners there with a lot of great insights into campaigns that are actually driving success for these B2B businesses. So thanks again for everybody joining us today, and have a great rest of the day.